Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon. This is the show where I take a look at every classic Doctor Who story, plus a bunch of Big Finish audio dramas, every single day, 7 days a week. And today, on the 9th of August 2018, we are starting the Season 12 finale of Doctor Who with Revenge of the Cybermen. And Revenge of the Cybermen is an episode, with Part 1, is an episode that is the first for a while. It's the first episode since... It's the first episode since 1967's The Tomb of the Cybermen, to be written by Gary Davis, one of the co-creators of the Cybermen. Kit Pedler, I don't think he had died by this point. I just think he had moved off of writing at this point, because it's Gary Davis who wrote this story. He wrote the story as a story for just to bring back the Cybermen, which is interesting because, well, it's a story that, as a story, it's one that starts off very, very slow. Like, you can tell that Gary Davis hadn't been writing for the show since the 60s because of how slow this first episode is. Like, we're back at Nerva Beacon after Genesis of the Daleks. Well, technically there's actually a book that takes place in between there, but I'm not doing books. But yeah, we're back at the beginning. Earlier in the past, like long before the arc in space, and the TARDIS is being sent back, and there's some nice, there's some very, very nice, one of those. It's a very nice, comedic moments here, but the Nerva is under plague, and well, we all know it's the Cybermen. Like, let's not hit ourselves. We know that it's the Cybermen early on. We know that it must be the Cybermen because that's just sort of how it is. It's not a, it could be the Cybermen. We know it's the Cybermen. But Gary Davis likes to keep us in suspense. We only get one shot of the Cybermen. Halfway through, the first episode, they reveal it's the Cybermen. So it doesn't quite fall to the weakness of, is it going to turn out to be the Cybermen, even though the name's in the title? But it does sort of fall into the trap of, we don't know what the story is, because, they could be evil, but maybe they're not. Who knows? It's one of those things that, it's one of those things where really the story could do a lot more. And you really have the story it doesn't keep going. It's just like, we think we might be going somewhere, but you have the Doctor in sort of actual Doctor mode. He and Harry Sullivan. Sarah Jane sadly doesn't have too much to do. It seems like Gary Davis was writing for just one person, so she's just sort of there to be our cliffhanger fodder where she gets attacked by a Cybermat. Or at least I'm assuming it's a Cybermat. That might, but yeah. But we have some interesting characters on the crew. We have Kelman, who is sort of sending out secret communications, and I think we're supposed to think that he's going to the Cybermen. Again, who only show up for 1 second, but there's also an agent of the Vogons. I'll get to the Vogons in a second, because they're kind of important, even if they really don't do much. Again, this is a story where there's a lot of build-up in this first episode. The plague is nice and creepy, and there's some nice moments. I mean, the Doctor being smoked out of Kelman's room because he finds, like, the communicator, and the fact that he's been spying on everybody. There's the commander and, like, another red shirt or two. Like, that's about it. It's a pretty small cast of characters. It's something that really doesn't do much. But Nerva is observing Voga, which is this planet made of gold. And apparently during the Cyber Wars, which were all off screen, like, let's be honest, they were pretty much all off screen. We've never really gotten the Cyber Wars as like as a like a concept. They're just they're off screen. Something I think is interesting is that they have this interesting concept off screen, and Vogons, they seem to have some they have some connection with Nerva, and they have their own politics, which are just kind of presented as boring. A couple of things. The direction of this episode is at least nice. Michael E. Bryant is in the director's chair, and the music is a nice change of pace, though it's kind of intrusive. It's Carrie Blyton, and we have more saxophones this time, and because it sounds like he's just reusing music all the way from Doctor Who and the Cybermen back in the third Doctor's era, if you remember that story, which the music was a bit intrusive, very, very, very intrusive in that story, and again, it's intrusive here too. Was one of the minor complaints about quite a bit of that early part of that story. So even the other part of this story, it's just the problem here is I'm bored by the story. It's not an engaging, an engaging look at, at these characters. It's dull. It's a decent episode. It kept my attention. It has a nice cliffhanger, and it has a nice hook. So I'm going to give Revenge of the Cybermen Part 1 a 6 out of 10. Alright, it is the 10th of August 2018, and I just finished watching Part 2 of Revenge of the Cybermen. And Part 2 of Revenge of the Cybermen is a decrease in quality immediately. Again, I'm going to just spoil it. The end of the episode is when the Cybermen actually show up and invade the beacon and actually contribute to the plot. I won't actually be talking about my issues with the Cybermen in this story until the next episode or even at Part 4. But they don't show up. And I guess the big reveal is that Kelman has been working with the Cybermen, even though the audience and the Doctor already knew it. Except they're not, because the Vogons are talking as if Kelman is their one, because it's got to be one of the 4 people who survived on Nerva Beacon, because they have this plan that makes no sense that they needed only 4 people living to draw the Cybermen in. The plan of the Vogons here doesn't make any sense. I'm also... Vogons. I gotta make sure I say Vogons, because Vogons are Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Jacob. But, the plan doesn't make any sense. They're luring the Cybermen here, I guess, to kill them? Which, okay, granted, that makes sense. Cybermen are evil. The Cyber Wars were a thing, and this is the first time we get the real gold screws with their respirators and clogs up their systems and kills them. A good thing. But, why does it kill the Cybermats, too? That's how the Doctor kills the Cybermen. Also, for whatever reason, transporting Sarah Jane down to the planet will save her life. That's a bit of a cop-out. Bit of a, it'll work, but forced drama. The Pentelian drive is off, so they won't get her down, even though they immediately do, because the Doctor jiggles some wires. The Doctor jiggles some wires and becomes the Deus Ex Machina for the episode, which, you could make the argument that that's sort of his role in the television series in general, but I'd make the argument that he isn't, because he actually seems to have flaws. No, this one is just the Doctor fixes it immediately. There isn't tension. It doesn't even seem to be difficult for the Doctor. He's we'll just have to find the drive to get her back. It'll be fine. Harry even knows how to use the things down on the planet, because he saw them in the Suntaran experiment. It's just... The episode, it makes these leaps where it's yes, the Doctor knows everything because he's the hero, and the hero is supposed to know everything, don't you know? That is the job of a protagonist. It's not you could limits on your hero, you don't want to make them too overpowered. It's sort of the thing that New Who does. I swear, a lot of New Who's faults come from bits of the Tom Baker era where they make Tom Baker overpowered as the Doctor. and they make him like the highest authority, which is funny because there's also a lot of points in Some Big Hero where he's not the highest authority. But he seems to be the highest authority here. He's giving an amazing performance. Like, he is being goofy and hilarious. Like, he also threatens to kill Kelman, like, with the Cybermat, because it's it's a remote-controlled Cybermat. Like, the Cybermats in Wheel in Space and Tomb, yeah, those are the only other times they show up, at least so far. They weren't remote-controlled, I don't think. I'm pretty sure they were, controlled by the Cybermen. But also, let's be honest, the plot on Voga, it doesn't make sense, and it's boring. Like, there's some action scenes to pad out the runtime here, and they're nice action scenes. I mean, the location footage is nice. The direction of the story is great. Michael E. Bryant does a great job directing the story. He knows how to frame, he knows, shot composition, he knows how to frame action sequences, especially and he also knows how to use the dark lighting of the caves to his advantage. Even if he kind of doesn't do the best for the actual Nerva Beacon, though the Nerva Beacon sets, as they're being reused, he also shoots them pretty well. He does really good with the atmosphere of the dead people, so I will actually give him credit there. But the episode itself, I'm sorry, it just comes across as really, really boring. And I say that because it's like, yes, everything is fine. We aren't evil at all, even though, your Cybermen are here, and, like, the Cybermen, their voices just sound like someone just has a deepening effect on them. Like, it's not the best Cyberman voice ever. I mean, that's a problem I have with actually Cyberman voices from this point on, is that they're sort of deep. I guess it sort of gets at the human element, but also, the fact that this story is called Revenge of the Cybermen. Why do they want a revenge? They don't deal... Revenge is something that comes out of emotion, not from pure hard logic as they're supposed to be. Again, these Cybermen are not the best. And they only show up at the very, very end. Like, we get some shots of them, and the shots are nice. We get to see the costumes, and the costumes look really good. There's a reason these and the Invasion Cybermen are some of the more iconic Cybermen designs, because they're really good costumes, though a bit too robotic for my tastes. But yeah, they show up, and Kelman is kind of a character. Also, another thing, if you look at the credits, this is a star-studded cast. I mean, a lot of the three of the Vogons are played by Kevin Stoney, under a bunch of heavy makeup. David Collings, who isn't quite a big star, but he's an actor who appears in Doctor Who and Doctor Who spin-offs and always gives a good performance. And Michael Wisher, who just played Davros. And all three of them kind of give subpar performances because they're not allowed to act with the prosthetics. Like, it's badly designed prosthetics. Like, they don't emote. Their faces look static. The emotion has to be in the voice, which doesn't quite work. Like, you need that sort of human element a little bit. Like, that's why, it's a very fine line. Like, obviously, like, or else you go with the one emotion, and that's just sort of meh, because there's supposed to be wide range of emotion. That's why, oddly enough, that's why the Cybermen and Daleks work, because they don't always seem to work, because their faces have to have one emotion. Daleks being hate, Cybermen being no emotion, that's part of the point. But, I mean, other than that, the episode just isn't very entertaining. It's dull. Sarah Jane and Harry, I mean, they get some nice banter that they get captured, and they spend the episode captured. Being thought, oh, you're intruders, you're evil. Again, it doesn't make sense. Also, I do love the moment of Harry just like, I'm just gonna steal some gold because I'm greedy. Like, I'm like, yeah, this is why you like Harry, because he is just like your average Joe. Like, he's like, but gold, I could be rich. Yeah, but other than that, the episode is just very meh. So I'm gonna give Revenge of the Cybermen Part 2 a 4 out of 10. Alright, it is the 10th of August 2018, and I just finished watching Part 3 of Revenge of the Cybermen, and as promised with part 3 of Revenge of the Cybermen, we're going to talk about the Cybermen. Yeah, I have a picture of a Vogon here. I couldn't find a good image of the Cybermen to use for this one. Just ignore it. So, the Cybermen's plan actually makes sense. Gold screws up their respirators, blow up Voga, the planet of gold, and then, well, you'll be fine. They'll be fine because, well, they won't have respirators. Problems, and they could very well win. They be the villains that win and destroy the universe. Except here's the thing. They're doing this for revenge because of something called a glitter gun that destroyed them in the Cyber Wars. Like, it's, do you realize the Cybermen are supposed to be emotionless, right? I mean, the guy that wrote this was Gary Davis, who helped co-create the Cybermen in 1966? I'm pretty sure it was 66. With Kit Pedler. Like, he should know that that his creations are emotionless creatures. Like, they don't have the proper emotions for anything. Like, they're supposed to be, you know, I guess stoic. They're supposed to not really, you know, care as much. Like, really, it's kind of silly when you think about it, because it's like, wait, this means they care? Like, I guess they could care hypothetically. Like, they want their plans to succeed, because they have... The closest emotion they have, I guess, would be desire, a drive to survive, even though that's not really an emotion. But other than that, this episode is even more boring than the last one. Like, seriously, it's... the Cybermen don't do much. I mean, let's be honest. We're gonna blow up the planet with a bunch of bombs, or... Like, okay, I guess that works. Especially because it's underneath the surface, and, you know, sending the doctor down to do their dirty work is, you know, makes sense. You know, it'll get rid of him, even though he's their enemy. I mean, it doesn't seem that they necessarily know who he is, which is interesting. Like, they're not necessarily like the Daleks, who immediately know who the doctor is, whenever they show up in Doctor Who. But yeah, it's just a bit weird on the whole that the Cybermen have this plan. I mean, it leads to a great cliffhanger where, you know, if they undo the clasps on their chest, the bombs will explode anyway, and there's a rock fall, and the doctor and the two others, they get, crushed under some rocks, which is like, oh no, are they going to get out alive? Who knows? Come back next week. But then Harry starts to undo the clasp, which, you know, is interesting. It's a good cliffhanger. It leaves you thoroughly, you know, oh, how are they going to get out of this one? Is it possible that they get out of this one? Like, there's actual danger, some actual stakes, which isn't bad. I'll give them credit for that. And the direction of the episode is still really, really good. Michael E. Bryant, again, does a really good job directing angles. And there's a lot of action scenes where Cybermen go down to Voga and try to kill some Vogans. Again, that just seems like it pads the runtime. Like, this feels very padded, as it's very much a padded part 3, where it's like, hey, we needed an excuse to get this to 4 parts. So here's some padded action scenes. Have some fun with that, you guys. It's something. And oddly enough, the action scenes, though, they do look nice, and the music actually works pretty well. Carrie Blyton's score is different and interesting. Like, it isn't as bad as his Silurian score, because I said it before, the Silurian score has as fans sort of call it, the kazoo of death. Which, you know, is just kind of dumb, using a kazoo in Doctor Who. Like, that doesn't really work as a method for scoring an episode. But also just the Vogan politics, where it's like, it turns out Kelman has been working for both the Cybermen and the Vogans. Like, they have a plan he's got together, which is interesting a bit, but it comes out of nowhere. Like, well, it doesn't even come out of nowhere. You know, the audience knows it's coming, so there really isn't a surprise. It should have been treated more as a twist. But other than that, you know, the episode is just, it's not it's not enjoyable. I'm going to give Revenge of the Cybermen Part 3 a 3 out of 10. Alright, it is the 11th of August 2018, and I just finished watching Part 4 of Revenge of the Cybermen. And, very, very sadly, Part 4 of Revenge of the Cybermen is one of those episodes where, well, it's an episode where, I hate to say it, but the story has a problem in it gets finished like a good 5 minutes before the closing, before the credits are set to roll. Because you have the story, the Cybermen blow stuff up. You have the Doctor giving an amazing line of, "Harry Sullivan is an imbecile." Quite famous line. Quite really, really, really good line, too. Like, it's a solid, a solid, line from, the Doctor. Because even though, really, he shouldn't be that angry, because how would the Doctor know that? How is Harry supposed to know? How's the Doctor supposed to know that you need how's Harry supposed to know that he wasn't supposed to take off the bomb? He was just trying to do the right thing. But yeah. It's one of those things where it really, you could, that's really it. That's really the only amazing part of this episode. The rest of it is just kind of meh. It's probably, it's better than the, than the fourth, than the other two, than the third episode, which was really, really dull. And hey, it leads into the next season with the Brigadier calling and saying, "Hey, I need help," and so we're going back to Earth right after this. It's on to bigger things. But you know it's one of those things where the story really could have done better with it. Like, it doesn't really do much. It isn't like it's one of those things where really the story could do better. Like, you have some great moments between the Doctor and Liz Sladen, but other than that, the episode is just not very good. It's like, oh, we have an episode, you better enjoy it. So yeah, it doesn't really do much for the story. It's like the Doctor's like, yeah, I exist, but as a character, again, you have the Cybermen defeated. They just get blown up, and they really don't do much in this last episode. They get some dialogue, but I barely remember the dialogue. It's just sort of there. It doesn't really, it doesn't do much. So, with that, it's just, you get a meh episode. So I'm going to give Revenge of the Cybermen Part 4 a 5 out of 10. And we average up the 4 episodes to give Revenge of the Cybermen a final score of 4.75 out of 10. Thank everybody once again for watching this episode of the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon. Please leave a like, comment if you agree or disagree. I don't really care. I always like engagements. And, please subscribe if you haven't already. And join me next time when we take a look at the opening of Season 13 of Doctor Who with Terror of the Zygons.